Joining us now for a discussion is political analyst Asanda Ngoasheng. A very good afternoon to you, Asanda. Thanks very much for your time. I must say, given just how accustomed we've become to Fikile Mbalula's almost weekly briefings, I did notice today, and I hope I'm not reading way too much into it, that he lacked a bit of that sting and his energy. Yeah, I don't know if you noticed that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a little bit of a lack of energy, I agree. But I think, it was revealed in some of the statements that he made about the DA, accusing it of trying to use the budgeting process as a way to renegotiate its position within the GNU. And I think that's a very important revelation or allegation, because we, for the first time in South Africa, have a parliament that isn't ANC majority. And therefore, it is possible that when parliament sits, they could reject the budget, which would have huge implications for South Africa's ability to deliver services and to actually execute, any kind of budget or any kind of service delivery. Because as things stand, everybody's basically waiting for this budget to be approved and finalized so that the new budgeting year effectively can start.
Interestingly, I mean, we were told or forewarned about this briefing yesterday, even before the finance minister, went to the podium and actually delivered his budget speech. And subsequently, from the time during the lockup, the finance minister said pretty much what Fikile Mbalula just said. The national chairperson of the ANC, Gweda Mandasha, said the same thing in his during a post-budget interview. So clearly, the ANC has taken a position, and I reckon it was for that reason that they then instructed or got Fikile Mbalula to then hold this briefing today. But when he was asked about what this means for the future of the GNU, he said something along the lines of, we will continue to engage with the DA, notwithstanding the fact that we believe they are using the budget to raise all manner of other things, like what they lost in the Bella when the Bella bill was being piloted, what they don't like about expropriation and the like. What do you think this is going to affect, or this is the beginning of the widening of cracks, between the most senior partners in the GNU?
Well, I think that, we are, until it ends, whenever that is, we are going to see at different turns conflict between the ANC and the DA, because fundamentally, although they're both neoliberal economy parties, and at a fundamental economic level, they mainly agree, there are some fundamental differences, like, minimum wage, and the DA doesn't think minimum wage should stand. They are against a lot of the labor laws that we have. And there's various other things, including the acts that they now seem to be negotiating on the basis of. So I'm not surprised that we keep coming back to this conflict between the ANC and the DA, this kind of potential, it's a permanent threat that this GNU could fold because the ANC and the DA do not agree. But unfortunately, I think for both of them, they're in a very tough position of needing each other, because the DA has never had a better opportunity to be in government and to actually influence policy at this high a level outside of the Western Cape. And this opportunity is one that I know that they do not take lightly, and they're not likely to get rid of or to take for granted effectively. The ANC, on the other hand, needs the 20% from the DA unless they reject the DA and go and get that 20% from the EFF and the MK, which is not likely to happen because of the conflict and the kind of lack of agreement just between the MK and the EFF itself. So what it means is it's a friend, an enemy of my enemy is my enemy at this point. And it's quite a marriage of convenience, and it will continue to be so until things, change drastically. And so I'm not surprised that we're back at conflict, we're back at the DA is trying to influence policy, et cetera, et cetera. And I think also, the DA has been basically disappearing under the ANC within this GNU, having to come out and say they believe in expropriation without compensation, having to do press conferences to that effect in order to counter AfriForum and their efforts to get us sanctioned by the US. And so they are constantly looking for ways to differentiate themselves, to make themselves stand out, and to remind their voters that they are not an ANC branch or an ANC breakaway party, because they've been, jokes with John Steenhuisen in ANC uniform, and some members of the DA itself have said that they don't know why they voted for the DA if the DA is simply going to take their vote to bolster the ANC rather than to work against the ANC, which is what said voters would have wanted, because when they voted, the DA would have been the opposition party. I think, though, what is interesting for me is in terms of the broader political space is I feel like the MK and the EFF are lacking in playing that opposition role. Just watching yesterday, the only thing they did really was to kind of call for an apology for being late, call for an explanation for why the budget was tabled late. And I think, at this critical point, there's so much more that they could be doing to disrupt. There's so much more that they could be doing to challenge this, this GNU government and its thrust forward effectively. And it's going to be interesting to see in the response and when this budget actually has to be passed, if the EFF and the MK are going to co-sign with the ANC or if they're going to reject it. And further, it's going to be interesting to see if the DA is going to join them and not co-sign the budget, or if things are going to move smoothly with a united GNU.
What's particularly, just a parting shot, interesting for me is that the posture the ANC takes when it comes to the DA now suddenly wanting to be speaking, on behalf of the masses or being on the side of the masses. And then on the other hand, the ANC is adopting a different posture when it comes to its own alliance partners in the form of COSATU and the SACP, who have come down who have been very critical of, in particular, the VAT increase. And someone has got to be confused and ask, why kiss the one and spit at the other?
Well, I think, the issue there is that the ANC, if you listen to, even just Fikile Mbalula, they're trying to create this balancing act where they're pushing for the VAT. They want that to happen because there isn't enough money in the fiscus as things stand. And so they're pushing for that and they're willing to go to the ends effectively for that. But if you look at what they're trying to do, for instance, with zero rating various products so that there's a minimized impact on the poor from that perspective, they're also trying to push to show that, they're giving above inflation increases on social grants, the refusal to remove the social, the so-called COVID grant, which, a lot of people were saying, get rid of the COVID grant and then you don't need a VAT. They know that if they get rid of that grant, if they're not seen to be increasing the grants, then they may lose their groundswell support. And that is what the ANC is concerned with. And so if they have to kind of be seen to be talking not so nicely to the alliance partners while, challenging the position that the DA is trying to now rebrand itself as the voice of the masses, that's what they're going to do, because the ANC cannot afford to be seen as anything but the voice for the masses. That's why even when they talk, they still use our people, talking about Black people, rather than our people, talking about all of South Africans, because the ANC has that history of being the voice of Black people in particular in South Africa. And that is a position that they will never move from, and that they wouldn't want to lose, because the minute they move away from that, and the minute the DA steps into that position, it gives them a wider audience and a wider engagement by the majority population of this country who happen to be Black.
A tricky balancing act indeed that the ANC is now engaged in, on the back, as you say, Asanda, of being hurt by the fact that the DA now postures, or at least fashions itself as the people who speak for the majority and speak for the poor, which traditionally is the terrain of the ANC. We shall see how this one pans out. Still to